Have you ever sat in the silence and felt a slow, warm wave of peace move through your limbs just by thinking of a calm sea? This evening, we are wrapping ourselves in the mystery of the inner world, specifically, the gentle power of mind over matter. We often see our bodies and the world as solid, heavy things, but they are also shaped by the softest of whispers, the trillions of quiet thoughts that shimmer in a delicate balance between our cells and our consciousness. From the light, airy focus that feels like smooth silk to the deep, steady calm that brings the weight of a long summer sleep, the way our minds touch our world is the visible sign of the soul's invisible strength. As we begin, imagine yourself resting in a pool of soft, blue light, feeling as loose and as easy as a cloud of mist. You do not need to worry about the science of the brain or the names of the ancient monks tonight. Just let the slow, swaying rhythm of your own presence wash over you and tuck you in. Allow this blanket of quiet thoughts and steady peace to be your guide as you move toward a deep and mindless rest. Now, take a slow, easy breath. Feel your chest rise and fall, as smooth and as sure as a low, sighing wave. Let the heaviness of your day dissolve into the soft, velvet shadows of the room. Release your jaw, let your shoulders slide down, and sink into the softness of your bed. Let's explore the quiet wonders of mind over matter together. In the vast silence of the universe, where stars burn for billions of years and galaxies drift like dust on an endless ocean, there exists something equally mysterious and profound, something that lives inside each one of us. It is the quiet power of the mind, a force so subtle and yet so strong that it can change the very fabric of our experience. It can transform pain into comfort, weakness into strength, and belief into reality. This is the story of mind over matter, a journey through the strange and beautiful ways our thoughts shape the world we feel and see. Imagine lying in a hospital bed, your body aching, your muscles tense with discomfort. A doctor approaches with a small white pill, assuring you that this medicine will ease your suffering. You swallow it, and within minutes, the pain begins to fade. Your breathing slows. Your muscles relax. The world softens around you. But here is the secret, the quiet miracle that science has discovered again and again. Sometimes that pill contains nothing at all. It is only sugar, pressed into a tiny circle, yet your pain vanishes just the same. This is the placebo effect, and it is real. When people believe they are receiving genuine medicine, their brains respond as if they truly are. Scientists have watched this happen in brain scans, seeing regions that process pain grow quieter, seeing chemistry shift and neurons fire in patterns that mirror the effects of actual drugs. The mind, expecting relief, creates relief. The belief becomes the medicine. But the mind's power flows in both directions, like a river that can nourish or flood. Just as positive expectations can heal, negative ones can harm. This is called the nocebo effect, and it is the shadow twin of the placebo. When people believe they will suffer side effects from a treatment, they often do, even when that treatment is nothing more than an empty capsule or a drink of plain water. Headaches bloom in the temples. Nausea rises in the stomach. Dizziness clouds the vision. The body responds to fear and expectation with symptoms as real as any caused by poison or disease. The mind, expecting harm, creates harm. In the quiet machinery of our nervous system, belief writes itself into physical reality. Consider the person who struggles to breathe, whose lungs tighten and wheeze with asthma. In research studies, some patients receive an inhaler filled with real medication that opens their airways, while others receive a sham inhaler containing nothing but air. And yet, when researchers ask these patients how they feel, both groups report similar relief. Both say their breathing has eased, that the tightness in their chest has loosened. But when doctors measure their lung function objectively, with machines that cannot be fooled by hope or expectation, only the group with real medicine shows true improvement. The airways of those with the sham inhaler remain just as narrow as before. What has changed is not their lungs, but their perception. Their mind has smoothed over the rough edges of their experience, painting comfort where discomfort still lives. The sensation of relief is genuine, even though the physical reality has not shifted. The same pattern emerges with other substances we consume, like the dark, bitter warmth of coffee. Caffeine is a stimulant that quickens the heart and sharpens the mind, and most of us know this feeling well. But studies have shown something remarkable. When people are told they are drinking regular coffee, even if it is actually decaffeinated, they begin to feel more alert. Their heart rate climbs slightly. Their focus sharpens. They feel the familiar buzz of energy spreading through their body. The expectation of caffeine produces effects that mimic the real drug, as if the mind reaches into the body's chemistry and adjusts it to match what it believes should happen. We are not passive vessels waiting to be filled by the substances we consume. We are active participants, shaping our responses through the lens of what we believe. Alcohol works much the same way. In carefully designed experiments, researchers have given people drinks that they are told contain alcohol, but which are actually non-alcoholic. And then they watch what happens. Speech begins to slur. Coordination falters. People stumble and laugh with the loose, unsteady movements of intoxication. Their behavior changes not because of any chemical in their blood, but because of what they expect alcohol to do. The mind, anticipating impairment, creates impairment. The body follows the script written by belief. Even the simple act of visiting a doctor can change the body in measurable ways. When you sit in a medical office and a professional in a white coat wraps a cuff around your arm to measure your blood pressure, something shifts inside you. Your heart beats a little faster. Your blood vessels constrict ever so slightly. The reading on the screen climbs higher than it would if you were measured at home, in the comfort of your own quiet space. This is called the white coat effect, and it reveals how deeply our bodies respond to context and expectation. The presence of authority, the clinical setting, the knowledge that you are being evaluated, all of these things send signals through your nervous system that change your physiology in real time. The mind recognizes the moment as important, and the body answers. Musicians and actors know a particular kind of terror, the pounding heart and trembling hands that come before stepping onto a stage. For some, doctors prescribe beta blockers, medications that slow the heart and reduce the physical symptoms of anxiety. But research suggests that these drugs work partly because performers expect them to. The belief that the medication will help amplifies its effects, adding a placebo component to the pharmacology. The mind and the medicine work together, each strengthening the other, until it becomes impossible to separate where one ends and the other begins. Sometimes the mind's power reveals itself in the most extreme circumstances, where survival hangs by the thinnest thread. On battlefields throughout history, soldiers have fought through injuries that should have overwhelmed them. Men with shrapnel embedded in their bodies, with blood soaking through their uniforms, have continued to move and act and make decisions, feeling nothing. It is only later, when the battle ends and the adrenaline fades, when the mind finally registers that safety has returned, that the pain comes crashing in like a wave. During the fight, the brain prioritizes survival over sensation. It redirects its resources, shutting down the perception of pain so that the body can continue to function. The injury is real, but the experience of it is delayed, held at bay by the mind's fierce focus on what must be done. Hypnosis offers another window into this same capacity. When a person is guided into a deeply relaxed and suggestible state, and the hypnotist speaks words that describe comfort and ease, that suggest pain is fading away like mist in the morning sun, many people genuinely feel less pain. Their subjective experience shifts. And when scientists place these people in brain scanners and watch what happens, they see something astonishing. The regions of the brain that process pain show reduced activity. The neural pathways that carry the sensation of hurt grow quieter, dimmer, as if someone has turned down the volume on suffering itself. The pain still exists in the body, but the mind has changed how it receives and interprets the signal. Centuries ago, before modern medicine understood the intricate connection between mind and body, doctors observed patients who developed strange and inexplicable symptoms. There were those who could not walk, though their legs were perfectly healthy. Others who went blind, though their eyes functioned normally. These patients were often called hysterics, and their conditions baffled the physicians of the time. There was no injury, no disease, no physical explanation for their paralysis or loss of sight. Yet the symptoms were not imagined. These people truly could not move or see. What doctors eventually discovered was that the cause lived not in the body, but in the mind. Some mental block, some unconscious conflict or trauma had manifested as a physical disability. And remarkably, these conditions could be resolved through hypnotic suggestion. By targeting the mental barrier, by speaking to the unconscious mind and giving it permission to release its grip, doctors could restore movement and vision. The body had been capable all along. It was the mind that had been holding it back. As we drift through the cosmos of consciousness, as we contemplate these strange and beautiful truths, we begin to see a pattern emerging. The boundary between mind and body is not a hard line, not a wall that separates thought from flesh. It is more like a membrane, permeable and flowing, where signals pass back and forth in constant conversation. What we believe shapes what we feel. What we expect influences what we experience. The body listens to the mind's quiet whispers and responds, sometimes in ways that seem to defy logic and reason. This is not magic. This is biology, neurology, the intricate dance of chemicals and electricity that makes us human. And yet it feels like magic, doesn't it? It feels like proof that we are more than just machines, more than collections of cells following predetermined scripts. We are beings with the power to participate in our own healing, to influence our own suffering, to shape reality through the force of our attention and belief. In the deep silence of space, where time moves slowly and nothing rushes, we can rest in this knowledge. We can feel the weight of it settle gently in our minds. The power has always been there, waiting inside us, quiet and patient as starlight crossing the void. Mind over matter is not about denying the body or ignoring pain. It is about recognizing that we are whole, integrated beings, where thought and sensation flow together like rivers joining into one. And in that recognition, there is peace, there is wonder, and there is hope. In the vast silence of the universe, where stars burn for billions of years and galaxies drift like dust on an endless ocean, there exists something equally mysterious and profound, something that lives inside each one of us. It is the quiet power of the mind, a force so subtle and yet so strong that it can change the very fabric of our experience. It can transform pain into comfort, weakness into strength, and belief into reality. This is the story of mind over matter, a journey through the strange and beautiful ways our thoughts shape the world we feel and see. Imagine lying in a hospital bed, your body aching, your muscles tense with discomfort. A doctor approaches with a small white pill, assuring you that this medicine will ease your suffering. You swallow it, and within minutes, the pain begins to fade. Your breathing slows. Your muscles relax. The world softens around you. But here is the secret, the quiet miracle that science has discovered again and again. Sometimes that pill contains nothing at all. It is only sugar, pressed into a tiny circle, yet your pain vanishes just the same. This is the placebo effect, and it is real. When people believe they are receiving genuine medicine, their brains respond as if they truly are. Scientists have watched this happen in brain scans, seeing regions that process pain grow quieter, seeing chemistry shift and neurons fire in patterns that mirror the effects of actual drugs. The mind, expecting relief, creates relief. The belief becomes the medicine. The hospitals where these discoveries happen are quiet places at night, lit by soft fluorescent glows that hum in the hallways. In research laboratories, where every variable is controlled and every response is measured, scientists have performed experiments that sound almost like fiction. They have taken patients scheduled for surgery and divided them into groups. Some receive the real procedure. Others receive only small incisions, mere marks on the skin, with no actual surgical intervention performed inside the body. And yet, when these patients wake and begin their recovery, many in both groups report improvement. Their pain decreases. Their function returns. The body, believing it has been repaired, begins to repair itself. Even sham surgeries, operations that change nothing physically, can trigger profound healing responses when patients trust that they have received genuine treatment. But the mind's power flows in both directions, like a river that can nourish or flood. Just as positive expectations can heal, negative ones can harm. This is called the nocebo effect, and it is the shadow twin of the placebo. When people believe they will suffer side effects from a treatment, they often do, even when that treatment is nothing more than an empty capsule or a drink of plain water. Headaches bloom in the temples. Nausea rises in the stomach. Dizziness clouds the vision. The body responds to fear and expectation with symptoms as real as any caused by poison or disease. The mind, expecting harm, creates harm. In the quiet machinery of our nervous system, belief writes itself into physical reality. Doctors have observed this in clinical trials where patients are warned about potential side effects. Even those receiving inert substances report experiencing those exact symptoms at rates far higher than chance would predict. The warning itself becomes a kind of prophecy, fulfilled by the body's eagerness to match expectation with experience. Consider the person who struggles to breathe, whose lungs tighten and wheeze with asthma. Each breath is a labor, a conscious effort to pull air through narrowed passages. In research studies, some patients receive an inhaler filled with real medication that opens their airways, while others receive a sham inhaler containing nothing but air. And yet, when researchers ask these patients how they feel, both groups report similar relief. Both say their breathing has eased, that the tightness in their chest has loosened. They describe the same sense of expansion, the same gratitude for air flowing more freely. But when doctors measure their lung function objectively, with machines that cannot be fooled by hope or expectation, only the group with real medicine shows true improvement. The airways of those with the sham inhaler remain just as narrow as before. What has changed is not their lungs, but their perception. Their mind has smoothed over the rough edges of their experience, painting comfort where discomfort still lives. The sensation of relief is genuine, even though the physical reality has not shifted. This reveals something profound about the layers of our experience, how what we feel can diverge from what is measurably true, and how both realities exist simultaneously within us. The same pattern emerges with other substances we consume, like the dark, bitter warmth of coffee. Caffeine is a stimulant that quickens the heart and sharpens the mind, and most of us know this feeling well. We reach for coffee in the morning, seeking that familiar awakening, that transition from sleep to alertness. But studies have shown something remarkable. When people are told they are drinking regular coffee, even if it is actually decaffeinated, they begin to feel more alert. Their heart rate climbs slightly. Their focus sharpens. They feel the familiar buzz of energy spreading through their body. The expectation of caffeine produces effects that mimic the real drug, as if the mind reaches into the body's chemistry and adjusts it to match what it believes should happen. We are not passive vessels waiting to be filled by the substances we consume. We are active participants, shaping our responses through the lens of what we believe. The ritual of coffee drinking, the warmth of the cup in our hands, the rich aroma rising in steam, all of these sensory cues tell the brain what to expect, and the brain obliges by creating that experience from within. Alcohol works much the same way, revealing how deeply expectation shapes our reality. In carefully designed experiments, researchers have given people drinks that they are told contain alcohol, but which are actually non-alcoholic. The drinks are prepared to taste and smell like the real thing, with all the sensory markers we associate with alcoholic beverages. And then the researchers watch what happens. Speech begins to slur. Coordination falters. People stumble and laugh with the loose, unsteady movements of intoxication. Their behavior changes not because of any chemical in their blood, but because of what they expect alcohol to do. The mind, anticipating impairment, creates impairment. The body follows the script written by belief. Social inhibitions lower. Risk-taking increases. All the behavioral signatures of drunkenness appear without a single molecule of alcohol entering the bloodstream. This demonstrates that much of what we experience as intoxication comes not from the substance itself, but from our learned associations with it, our cultural understanding of what it means to drink, and our permission to behave differently when we believe we have consumed it. Even the simple act of visiting a doctor can change the body in measurable ways. When you sit in a medical office and a professional in a white coat wraps a cuff around your arm to measure your blood pressure, something shifts inside you. Your heart beats a little faster. Your blood vessels constrict ever so slightly. The reading on the screen climbs higher than it would if you were measured at home, in the comfort of your own quiet space. This is called the white coat effect, and it reveals how deeply our bodies respond to context and expectation. The presence of authority, the clinical setting, the knowledge that you are being evaluated, all of these things send signals through your nervous system that change your physiology in real time. The mind recognizes the moment as important, and the body answers. It is not that people are anxious in any conscious way. They may feel perfectly calm. But beneath conscious awareness, the autonomic nervous system responds to the environment, preparing the body for scrutiny, activating stress responses that existed long before modern medicine, ancient mechanisms designed to help us perform under observation. Musicians and actors know a particular kind of terror, the pounding heart and trembling hands that come before stepping onto a stage. The audience waits in darkness, their attention focused like a spotlight, and every mistake will be heard or seen. For some performers, this anxiety becomes overwhelming, threatening to destroy their ability to perform at all. Doctors sometimes prescribe beta blockers, medications that slow the heart and reduce the physical symptoms of anxiety. But research suggests that these drugs work partly because performers expect them to. The belief that the medication will help amplifies its effects, adding a placebo component to the pharmacology. The mind and the medicine work together, each strengthening the other, until it becomes impossible to separate where one ends and the other begins. The performer takes the pill and feels protected, and that sense of protection itself reduces anxiety, which further improves performance, creating a positive cycle that spirals upward towards success. Sometimes the mind's power reveals itself in the most extreme circumstances, where survival hangs by the thinnest thread. On battlefields throughout history, soldiers have fought through injuries that should have overwhelmed them. Men with shrapnel embedded in their bodies, with blood soaking through their uniforms, have continued to move and act and make decisions, feeling nothing. It is only later, when the battle ends and the adrenaline fades, when the mind finally registers that safety has returned, that the pain comes crashing in like a wave. During the fight, the brain prioritizes survival over sensation. It redirects its resources, shutting down the perception of pain so that the body can continue to function. The injury is real, but the experience of it is delayed, held at bay by the mind's fierce focus on what must be done. This is not about being tough or brave in any traditional sense. It is about the brain making calculations about what matters most in each moment. When danger is present, pain becomes a distraction, a liability that could prevent escape or defense. So the brain simply turns down the volume, postponing the sensation until safety allows it to be processed. Hypnosis offers another window into this same capacity, a gentler demonstration of the mind's ability to reshape experience. When a person is guided into a deeply relaxed and suggestible state, and a hypnotist speaks words that describe comfort and ease, that suggest pain is fading away like mist in the morning sun, many people genuinely feel less pain. Their subjective experience shifts. And when scientists place these people in brain scanners and watch what happens, they see something astonishing. The regions of the brain that process pain show reduced activity. The neural pathways that carry the sensation of hurt grow quieter, dimmer, as if someone has turned down the volume on suffering itself. The pain still exists in the body, the injury or illness remains, but the mind has changed how it receives and interprets the signal. The message arrives but is met with different expectations, filtered through a lens of calm acceptance rather than fear and resistance. Centuries ago, before modern medicine understood the intricate connection between mind and body, doctors observed patients who developed strange and inexplicable symptoms. There were those who could not walk, though their legs were perfectly healthy. Others who went blind, though their eyes functioned normally. These patients were often called hysterics, and their conditions baffled the physicians of the time. There was no injury, no disease, no physical explanation for their paralysis or loss of sight. Yet the symptoms were not imagined. These people truly could not move or see. What doctors eventually discovered was that the cause lived not in the body, but in the mind. Some mental block, some unconscious conflict or trauma had manifested as a physical disability. And remarkably, these conditions could be resolved through hypnotic suggestion. By targeting the mental barrier, by speaking to the unconscious mind and giving it permission to release its grip, doctors could restore movement and vision. The body had been capable all along. It was the mind that had been holding it back. This revealed a truth that still challenges our understanding today. The mind can create barriers as real as any physical obstacle, and it can remove them just as completely. As we drift through the cosmos of consciousness, as we contemplate these strange and beautiful truths, we begin to see a pattern emerging. The boundary between mind and body is not a hard line, not a wall that separates thought from flesh. It is more like a membrane, permeable and flowing, where signals pass back and forth in constant conversation. What we believe shapes what we feel. What we expect influences what we experience. The body listens to the mind's quiet whispers and responds, sometimes in ways that seem to defy logic and reason. This is not magic. This is biology, neurology, the intricate dance of chemicals and electricity that makes us human. And yet it feels like magic, doesn't it? It feels like proof that we are more than just machines, more than collections of cells following predetermined scripts. We are beings with the power to participate in our own healing, to influence our own suffering, to shape reality through the force of our attention and belief. In the deep silence of space, where time moves slowly and nothing rushes, we can rest in this knowledge. We can feel the weight of it settle gently in our minds. The power has always been there, waiting inside us, quiet and patient as starlight crossing the void. Mind over matter is not about denying the body or ignoring pain. It is about recognizing that we are whole, integrated beings, where thought and sensation flow together like rivers joining into one. And in that recognition, there is peace, there is wonder, and there is hope that stretches outward into the infinite darkness, a small light of understanding in the vast mystery of existence. We continue our journey now deeper into the mystery, where the line between mind and body grows even more blurred, even more impossible to trace. We have seen how belief can ease pain and how expectation can create symptoms where none should exist. But the power of the mind reaches further still, into territories that challenge everything we think we know about the separation between our thoughts and our flesh, between our inner world and the physical reality we inhabit. In remote villages across the world, anthropologists have documented cases that seem to belong more to folklore than to science, and yet they are real. They are called voodoo deaths, and they represent one of the most extreme demonstrations of mind over matter ever observed. Imagine a person living in a tight-knit community where social bonds are everything, where belonging is survival itself. Now imagine that person is accused of a terrible transgression, cursed by a priest or shaman, and cast out completely from the group. The isolation is total. The community turns its back. And then something extraordinary and terrible happens. Within days, sometimes within hours, the person begins to deteriorate. Their body weakens. Their heart rate becomes erratic. And then they die. There is no poison, no physical attack, no measurable cause that modern medicine can identify. What kills them is belief itself, the absolute conviction that they are doomed, combined with the crushing weight of social rejection. The stress becomes so extreme, so all-consuming, that it appears to shut down vital functions. The mind, believing death is inevitable, guides the body toward that very outcome. The fear becomes a self-fulfilling prophecy written in the language of physiology. This is not an isolated phenomenon, not a quirk of distant cultures or primitive superstitions. The mechanism lives in all of us, waiting in the shadows of extreme stress. When the mind perceives a threat as absolute and inescapable, when hope vanishes completely, the body can respond by simply giving up. The autonomic nervous system, which controls heart rate and breathing and all the automatic functions that keep us alive, can spiral into dysfunction when overwhelmed by psychological terror. We are more fragile than we like to believe, more dependent on hope and connection than we usually acknowledge. But the mind's influence can spread beyond the individual, moving through groups like ripples on still water. Throughout history, there have been outbreaks of illness that medical science cannot explain, where dozens or even hundreds of people suddenly develop identical symptoms. They faint in waves. Rashes bloom on their skin. Headaches and nausea sweep through a school or factory or village. Doctors rush to investigate, searching for toxins or infections, but they find nothing. The water is clean. The air is safe. And slowly, the truth emerges. This is mass psychogenic illness, sometimes called mass hysteria, though that term carries judgment that the phenomenon does not deserve. What happens is this: anxiety takes root in a group, often triggered by something ambiguous, a strange smell or a rumor of danger. One person becomes ill, genuinely ill from stress and fear. Others see this and their own anxiety rises. They begin to feel symptoms too, not because they are pretending or weak, but because the mind, primed by suggestion and collective fear, creates those sensations in the body. The symptoms are real. The suffering is authentic. But the cause is not a poison or a germ. It is shared belief, a kind of emotional contagion that spreads as fast as any virus. And here is the remarkable part. When calm is restored, when authorities provide reassurance and the group's anxiety eases, the symptoms vanish. Bodies that were moments ago trembling and sick return to health, released from the grip of collective fear. Sometimes the mind's power manifests in a single person, shutting down specific functions in response to overwhelming trauma. This is called conversion disorder, and it reveals how the brain can protect us from psychological pain by creating physical barriers. A person experiences something terrible, something too awful to process or accept. And then, without warning, they lose their voice. Or they cannot move their legs. Or their hand becomes paralyzed. Medical examinations reveal nothing wrong with the vocal cords, the muscles, the nerves. Everything is physically intact. Yet the disability is real. The person truly cannot speak or walk. What has happened is that the mind has essentially forbidden the body from performing these functions, creating a neural roadblock that prevents the signals from getting through. Brain imaging studies show this clearly. The pathways are inhibited, blocked by unconscious processes that the person has no control over. But here is the hopeful truth. These conditions can be reversed. Through therapy that targets the underlying beliefs and trauma, through gradually rebuilding trust between mind and body, the blockages can dissolve. Movement returns. Voice comes back. The body was capable all along. It was waiting for the mind to give permission. Even more striking are cases of people with dissociative identity disorder, where different personalities exist within one person, each with its own distinct sense of self. What researchers have discovered is astonishing. These different identities can have different physical characteristics. One identity might have perfect vision while another needs glasses. One might be allergic to certain foods while another eats those same foods without reaction. The same body, the same immune system, the same eyes, and yet they function differently depending on which mental state is present. This suggests that our mental state can modulate bodily functions in ways we are only beginning to understand. The identity that is present shapes not just behavior and memory, but the actual physical responses of organs and tissues. It is as if the body takes its cues from the mind, adjusting itself to match each identity's expectations and history. Beyond these dramatic cases, the mind's influence on the body plays out in quieter, more everyday ways that touch all of us. Consider loneliness, that aching emptiness that settles in when we feel disconnected from others. Loneliness is not just an emotion. It is a physical state that the body registers and responds to. Studies show that chronic loneliness predicts higher levels of inflammation throughout the body, that persistent state of immune activation that underlies so many diseases. It predicts poorer immune function overall, making lonely people more vulnerable to infections and slower to heal. What matters most is not how many people surround us, but how we perceive and interpret our social situations. Two people with the same number of friends can have completely different experiences. One feels connected and supported, while the other feels isolated and alone. And it is the perception, the interpretation, that shapes the body's response. The mind looks at the social landscape and decides whether we are safe and supported or vulnerable and abandoned. And based on that assessment, it adjusts inflammation, immune function, and stress hormones accordingly. The opposite is also true. When people feel emotionally supported and connected, when they believe they have others who care about them and will help them, their bodies function better. They show stronger responses to vaccines, producing more antibodies and better protection against disease. Their wounds heal faster, their tissues knitting back together more quickly. These are not small effects. They are measurable, significant differences in how the body repairs and defends itself. Our thoughts and feelings about our relationships, our sense of belonging or isolation, influence the very mechanisms that keep us alive and healthy. The social world and the biological world are not separate domains. They are intimately connected, constantly communicating through the medium of the mind. Even structured therapeutic approaches that focus on changing thought patterns can produce measurable changes in immune function. Cognitive behavioral therapy, which helps people identify and modify unhelpful ways of thinking, has been shown to alter antibody levels in people with chronic illnesses. By changing how someone thinks about their condition, how they interpret symptoms, and how they cope with stress, therapy can shift the immune system's behavior. The thoughts become chemistry. The new perspectives become new patterns of cellular activity. Mind and body move together, adjusting in concert as one integrated system. When researchers review all the evidence about mindset and health, a clear picture emerges. Our expectations and beliefs can influence immune function, cardiovascular health, and metabolic processes. They can push these systems in directions that either protect us or undermine us. A person who expects to be healthy, who believes their body is capable and resilient, tends to have better outcomes than someone who expects decline and feels helpless. This is not about positive thinking as a cure-all or blaming sick people for their illness. It is about recognizing that the mind is one factor among many that shapes health, and it is a factor we have some ability to influence. Purpose provides another pathway through which the mind shapes physical health. People who report having a strong sense of purpose in life, who feel that their existence has meaning and direction, show lower risk of stroke and heart disease even after researchers account for all the traditional medical risk factors. They are less likely to die prematurely. Purpose is not a tangible thing. You cannot hold it in your hand or measure it with a blood test. It exists only in the realm of meaning and interpretation, in how we think about our lives and our place in the world. And yet it affects mortality, that most concrete of outcomes. Having something to live for, some reason to get up in the morning, some contribution to make, appears to send protective signals through the body. Perhaps it reduces stress. Perhaps it motivates healthier behaviors. Perhaps it affects hormones and immune function directly. The mechanisms are still being explored, but the connection is clear. What we believe about the meaning of our lives influences how long those lives last. Even in the face of serious illness, mindset matters. Consider two people who have both suffered heart attacks, whose hearts have been damaged by the same lack of oxygen, whose medical charts look nearly identical. One person is optimistic, believing they can recover, trusting that rehabilitation will help. The other is pessimistic, convinced their body has betrayed them and will fail again. Studies show that the optimistic patients tend to adhere better to their rehabilitation programs and their medication schedules. They show up to their appointments. They take their pills on time. They push themselves in physical therapy. And as a result, they generally experience better recovery outcomes. Their hearts heal more completely. They return to normal activities more successfully. Is it just the behavior, the fact that they follow medical advice more carefully? Partly, yes. But some research suggests there may be more to it, that optimism itself might have direct effects on physiology, reducing stress hormones, supporting immune function, creating an internal environment more conducive to healing. The belief in recovery may actually help create that recovery. None of this means that we can simply think ourselves well, that cancer will vanish if we just have the right attitude, or that mental strength alone can overcome serious disease. The body is physical. It obeys the laws of biology and chemistry. Infections need antibiotics. Broken bones need time to mend. But within the constraints of physical reality, the mind has more influence than we once believed possible. It can amplify treatment or undermine it. It can support healing or interfere with it. It can make suffering more bearable or more intense. We are not prisoners of our thoughts, but neither are we separate from them. They flow through us like currents, shaping our experience and our outcomes in ways both obvious and subtle. As we float here in the quiet darkness between the stars, considering all these threads of evidence, a picture forms of what it means to be human. We are not minds trapped in bodies, not ghosts operating meat machines. We are unified beings where every thought ripples into physiology and every physical state colors our consciousness. The barrier we imagine between mental and physical is an illusion, a convenience of language that does not reflect reality. In truth, there is only one system, endlessly complex, where neurons fire and hearts beat and immune cells patrol, and all of it happens in constant conversation. A symphony played on biological instruments tuned by millions of years of evolution. The power we have is not unlimited, but it is real. By changing what we believe, how we interpret our circumstances, what we expect from the future, we can nudge our biology in healthier directions. We can reduce unnecessary suffering. We can support our body's natural capacity to heal and adapt. This is not magic. It is science revealing what mystics and healers have intuited for thousands of years: that we are whole, that mind matters, that consciousness is not separate from flesh but woven into it at every level. And in this understanding, there is both responsibility and hope. The responsibility to tend to our thoughts as carefully as we tend to our diet or exercise. The hope that we are not helpless, that even in the face of illness or pain, we have some agency, some ability to influence our experience and our outcomes through the quiet power of the mind. In the vast and ancient darkness of space, where galaxies turn slowly through eons, this small truth burns bright. We are more than we seem, more integrated, more capable, more mysterious than any purely material description could capture. Mind over matter is not a supernatural claim. It is simply an acknowledgement of what we are, bodies and minds together, inseparable, dancing through existence as one. We move now into the realm of everyday miracles, where the mind's power over the body reveals itself not in dramatic cases or extreme circumstances, but in the ordinary moments that make up our lives. Every thought we have, every interpretation we make, sends signals cascading through our nervous system, changing us in ways we rarely notice but constantly experience. The mind is always speaking to the body, and the body is always listening, responding with remarkable speed and precision to messages that exist only as patterns of electrical activity in the brain. Consider a quiet evening at home. You are sitting comfortably, safe and warm, when suddenly a thought arrives unbidden. What if something terrible happens tomorrow? What if the presentation at work goes wrong? What if the pain in your back is something serious? What if the people you love are in danger? These are just thoughts, just possibilities imagined by a mind trying to prepare for the future. Nothing has actually happened. The danger is not real. And yet your body responds as if it is. Within moments, your heart begins to beat faster. Your blood pressure rises. Your muscles tense. Stress hormones flood your bloodstream. The ancient machinery of fight or flight activates, preparing you to run or to battle, even though there is nothing to run from and nothing to fight. Your body cannot tell the difference between a real threat and an imagined one. It reads the fear in your thoughts and responds with the same biological program that would activate if a predator had just appeared. The catastrophizing thought, the what-if scenario spiraling through your mind, becomes a kind of threat in itself, one that your nervous system treats with complete seriousness. This happens faster than we can imagine, faster than conscious awareness can track. A sudden mental image flashes through your mind, perhaps a memory of past danger or a feared future scenario, and before you even realize what you are thinking about, your body has already responded. The muscles in your jaw clench. Your shoulders rise and tighten. Your stomach contracts. Your hands ball into fists. All of this happens within fractions of a second, long before the conscious mind catches up and says, "Oh, I was just thinking about something stressful." The body acts on predictions derived from thought almost instantaneously, reading patterns in brain activity and preparing for action before awareness dawns. We like to think we control our bodies consciously, that we decide when to tense or relax, when to prepare or rest. But the truth is that most of this happens automatically, driven by processes too fast and too deep to reach with conscious intention. The thought sparks, and the body ignites. Many of our reactions happen this way, in the twilight zone between unconscious and conscious, where the body responds to threats that exist only in the mind. You flinch at a loud noise before you know what caused it. Your heart pounds at the thought of danger before you have assessed whether the danger is real. These are not failures of the system. They are features, adaptations that kept our ancestors alive by responding to possible threats with maximum speed. Better to react to 100 false alarms than to hesitate once when the danger is real. But in the modern world, where most threats are not physical and immediate but psychological and distant, this hair-trigger responsiveness can work against us. We activate stress responses dozens of times a day in response to thoughts alone, wearing down our bodies with false alarms that never resolve into either fight or flight. The damage accumulates when thoughts become repetitive, when we cannot let go of what happened or what might happen. This is called rumination, the act of replaying negative thoughts over and over like a song stuck in the mind. Something stressful occurs, a conflict at work or a harsh word from a friend, and the event itself lasts only minutes. But then the mind takes over, rehashing what was said, imagining what should have been said, predicting what will happen next, building elaborate scenarios of failure or rejection. Hours pass, days pass, and the original event is long finished, but the body remains in a state of stress. Heart rate stays elevated. Blood pressure remains high. Stress hormones continue to circulate. The rumination maintains the physiological response long after the actual stressor has ended, as if the event is still happening, as if the threat is still present. The mind, by refusing to let go, keeps the body in a state of siege. This is how thoughts can harm us, not through any single dramatic moment, but through the slow accumulation of unnecessary stress, the constant activation of systems that were meant to be used briefly and then turned off. But here is where hope enters the story, where the mind's power reveals its other face. If thoughts can create stress, they can also create resilience. If interpretation can activate threat responses, it can also deactivate them. The key lies not in the events themselves, but in how we think about them, what we believe they mean, and what we tell ourselves about our ability to cope. Research shows something remarkable. The belief that one can handle upcoming stressors is a better predictor of resilience and health than the actual objective severity of those stressors. Two people face the same challenge, the same exam or deadline or medical procedure. One believes they can cope, that they have the resources and strength to manage whatever comes. The other doubts themselves, feels overwhelmed and helpless. And even though the external stressor is identical, their outcomes differ dramatically. The person who believes in their ability to cope experiences less anxiety, performs better, and recovers more quickly. Their body responds to the challenge with activation but not overwhelm, with engagement but not panic. Meanwhile, the person who doubts their capacity experiences more distress, more physical symptoms, poorer performance. The stressor may be the same, but the interpretation transforms it into something either manageable or catastrophic. Some people seem to have this capacity naturally, showing high levels of what researchers call trait resilience. These are individuals who bounce back from adversity more quickly, who maintain their equilibrium in the face of stress. And their bodies reflect this psychological resilience in measurable ways. After experiencing an acute stressor, their cardiovascular systems recover more quickly. Heart rate returns to baseline faster. Blood pressure drops back to normal more efficiently. It is as if their bodies trust that the danger has passed, that there is no need to maintain high alert. This physical recovery mirrors and reinforces psychological recovery, creating a positive cycle. The mind calms, which calms the body, which further calms the mind. People with lower resilience show the opposite pattern. Slower recovery, prolonged activation, bodies that stay vigilant long after the threat is gone, as if waiting for the other shoe to drop. The good news is that interpretation is not fixed. We can learn to think about challenges differently, to frame difficulties in ways that support rather than undermine us. When a failure occurs, we face a choice in how to understand it. We can interpret it as evidence of a personal flaw, a sign that we are inadequate or broken. This interpretation triggers shame and hopelessness, shutting down motivation and increasing stress. Or we can reframe it as a learning opportunity, a source of information about what to try differently next time. This interpretation reduces stress responses and encourages continued effort. The failure itself has not changed. What has changed is the story we tell about it, the meaning we extract, the conclusion we draw about ourselves and our future. And that change in story produces a change in biology, a shift from defensive shutdown to engaged problem-solving. This principle applies even to physical sensations. Consider the experience of a difficult workout, the burning in muscles pushed to their limit, the gasping for air, the exhaustion spreading through limbs. These sensations can be interpreted as purely aversive, as suffering to be avoided, as signs that something is wrong. Or they can be reframed as beneficial, as good pain, as evidence that the body is adapting and growing stronger. People who adopt this second interpretation tend to tolerate more exertion. They can push themselves further, work harder, persist longer. And they report less fatigue, even though the objective physical demands are the same. The sensations are identical, but the meaning assigned to them changes everything. Pain that means growth is easier to bear than pain that means damage. Difficulty that signals progress is more tolerable than difficulty that signals futility. The same principle extends to emotional and psychological states. A racing heart can mean danger and anxiety, or it can mean readiness and excitement. Sweaty palms can signal fear, or they can signal preparation for action. The bodily sensations are the same, but the interpretation determines whether they become obstacles or assets. People who learn to reinterpret these arousal signals as signs of readiness rather than signs of threat experience less anxiety in stressful situations. Their performance improves because they are not fighting against their own physiology. Instead of thinking, "My racing heart means I am panicking and will fail," they think, "My racing heart means my body is preparing me to perform well." The body's response remains the same, but the mind's relationship to that response transforms from adversarial to collaborative. The arousal that once seemed like an enemy becomes an ally, a source of energy and focus rather than a source of fear. Athletes understand this instinctively, though many have learned it through hard experience rather than explicit teaching. Those who view stress as purely harmful, who see pressure as something that diminishes them, tend to perform worse under competition and experience more health problems. Their bodies stay in a defensive mode, constricted and guarded. But athletes who reframe stress as a challenge, who see pressure as an opportunity to test themselves and discover their limits, show better health outcomes and better performance. They approach high-stakes situations with a different physiological profile, one characterized by engagement rather than threat, by approach rather than avoidance. Their hearts beat just as fast, their muscles tense just as much, but these reactions are channeled into effective action rather than dissipated in anxiety. The stress becomes fuel instead of poison. None of this is about pretending that difficult things are easy or denying that real challenges exist. Reframing is not the same as lying to ourselves. It is about choosing interpretations that are both accurate and empowering, about recognizing that most situations can be understood in multiple ways, and some ways of understanding serve us better than others. A difficult task is genuinely difficult, but it can be difficult in a way that defeats us or difficult in a way that develops us. A stressor is genuinely stressful, but stress can break us down or build us up depending on how we relate to it. The external reality has not changed, but our relationship to that reality shifts, and in that shift, everything changes. The body is always listening to the stories we tell about our experience. It hears our interpretations and adjusts accordingly. When we tell ourselves we cannot cope, it prepares for failure, conserving resources, pulling back, initiating the biology of defeat. When we tell ourselves we can manage, that we have what it takes, it prepares for success, mobilizing resources, leaning forward, initiating the biology of engagement. The mind's narrative becomes the body's instruction manual, a set of directions that shape how we respond to every challenge we face. In the darkness between stars, where time stretches out long and slow, we can reflect on this truth. We cannot control what happens to us, but we have more control than we realize over what those events mean, how we interpret the sensations in our bodies, what we believe about our capacity to cope. This is not a small power. It is the difference between resilience and fragility, between growth and stagnation, between a body that supports our goals and a body that works against them. Every thought is a choice, every interpretation a fork in the road. And the path we take with our minds determines the path our bodies follow. The two are not separate journeys. They are one journey, taken together, shaped at every moment by the stories we tell and the meanings we make. In recognizing this, we find not burden but possibility, not pressure but potential. We are not helpless observers of our own experience. We are participants, co-creators, minds shaping matter moment by moment through the quiet power of interpretation and belief. And in that participation, in that active engagement with how we think and what we believe, lies the true meaning of mind over matter, not as escape from the body but as partnership with it, working together toward health and wholeness and the fullest expression of what we can become. We arrive now at a place where understanding becomes practice, where the knowledge of mind over matter transforms into something we can use, tools we can pick up and apply in the living of our own lives. The power we have been exploring is not locked away in laboratories or reserved for extreme cases. It lives in the everyday choices we make about how to interpret what happens to us, how to frame the sensations we feel, and what we believe about our own capacity to grow and change. Imagine standing at the edge of something difficult, a presentation you must give or a conversation you have been avoiding or a challenge that tests the limits of what you think you can do. Your body begins to respond. Your heart accelerates, beating hard against your ribs. Your palms grow damp with sweat. Your breath quickens. These are the ancient signals of stress, the body preparing for action. And in that moment, you face a choice about what these sensations mean. The traditional interpretation, the one most of us learn without ever being taught, is that these signs mean danger. They mean you are nervous, anxious, not ready. They mean something is wrong. But research on stress reappraisal reveals a different possibility. When people are taught to view these same sensations as signs of readiness instead of danger, as evidence that the body is mobilizing resources to help them perform well, something remarkable happens. Their cardiovascular responses become more adaptive. The body still activates, The heart still races, but the pattern of activation shifts from threat to challenge, from constriction to engagement. Blood flows to the brain and muscles instead of pooling defensively in the core. The body prepares to act effectively rather than to defend desperately. In carefully controlled experiments, researchers have taught some participants this reappraisal skill while leaving others to interpret their stress in the usual way. Then they give everyone a demanding cognitive task, something that requires focus and mental effort under pressure. And consistently, the participants who learn to reframe their arousal as helpful rather than harmful perform better. They think more clearly. They make fewer mistakes. They persist longer when the task becomes difficult. The physical stress response is the same in both groups, but the interpretation of that response changes everything. One group fights against their own physiology, trying to calm down, viewing their activation as an obstacle to overcome. The other group works with their physiology, accepting the activation, viewing it as energy that can be channeled toward the task at hand. And that difference in mindset produces a measurable difference in performance. This is not just about stress. It is about how the mind can reach into the body's automatic processes and shape them through interpretation. Psychological models of emotion regulation map out the pathways through which this happens. When we change how we interpret a situation, that cognitive shift cascades down through multiple levels of physiological response. Blood pressure adjusts. Hormone release patterns change. The nervous system recalibrates. What begins as a thought, an interpretation, a frame of reference, becomes chemistry and electricity, altering the physical state of every cell. The mind does not override the body's responses. Instead, it participates in generating them, providing context that shapes how automatic systems activate and how intensely they engage. This principle extends far beyond individual moments of stress. It shapes our entire approach to learning and growth. Some people move through life with what researchers call a fixed mindset, believing that abilities are essentially unchangeable, that you either have talent or you don't, that intelligence and skill are fixed quantities determined at birth. Others hold a growth mindset, believing that abilities can be developed through effort and practice, that struggle is how we learn, that the brain itself changes and grows stronger through challenge. These beliefs, these fundamental assumptions about the nature of human potential, produce dramatically different outcomes. When someone with a fixed mindset encounters a setback, they interpret it as evidence of their limitations. They think, I failed because I am not smart enough, not talented enough, not capable enough. And this interpretation triggers withdrawal. Why keep trying if success is impossible? But when someone with a growth mindset faces the same setback, they interpret it differently. They think, I failed because I haven't learned this yet, because I need more practice, because I need to try a different approach. And this interpretation fuels persistence. The challenge becomes interesting rather than threatening. The struggle becomes meaningful rather than futile. Over time, over many setbacks and many efforts, these different interpretations lead to different levels of achievement. The person with a growth mindset persists longer, learns more, ultimately accomplishes more, not because they started with more ability, but because they held a belief that made persistence feel worthwhile. Sometimes the power of belief operates through other people's expectations. In a famous series of studies known as the Pygmalion effect, researchers told teachers that certain students in their classes had been identified as intellectual bloomers, children who would show remarkable growth over the coming year. In reality, these students were chosen randomly. They were no different from their classmates. But the teachers believed they were special, and that belief changed how the teachers interacted with them. The teachers gave these students more attention, more encouragement, more challenging material. They interpreted the students' successes as signs of brilliance and their failures as temporary setbacks. And by the end of the school year, those randomly selected students actually did show greater gains in IQ scores and academic performance compared to their peers. The teachers' expectations alone, the beliefs they held about what these children were capable of, created measurable changes in outcomes. The mind of the teacher shaped the development of the student, not through any conscious manipulation, but simply through the subtle shifts in behavior that flow from expectation. Even beliefs about abstract philosophical concepts can influence behavior in concrete ways. Take the question of free will, whether we truly make choices or whether our actions are determined by forces beyond our control. In experiments, when people are exposed to arguments against free will, when they are primed to doubt their own agency, their subsequent behavior changes. They show worse self-control. They cheat more in tasks where cheating is possible. The belief in determinism, even if only temporarily activated, seems to reduce the sense of personal responsibility that normally constrains selfish behavior. Conversely, belief in free will correlates with better self-regulation and more ethical choices. What we believe about the fundamental nature of choice influences how we actually make choices, as if the philosophical position becomes a self-fulfilling prophecy. The absence of agency, the feeling of helplessness, can be learned through repeated experience of uncontrollable negative events. This is called learned helplessness, and it produces a state remarkably similar to depression. Motivation collapses. Dopamine responses flatten. The world loses color and interest. But here is the crucial discovery. This state can be reversed through mindset shifts, through moving from a stance of victimhood to one of agency, from passive suffering to active engagement. When people learn that they do have control, that their actions can make a difference, the dopamine system reactivates. Motivation returns. The depression lifts. The change begins in the mind, in a new interpretation of circumstances, in a reclaimed sense of possibility. And that mental shift triggers neurochemical changes that restore the capacity for hope and action. Not all positive thinking is equally effective, however. Simply fantasizing about success, imagining wonderful outcomes without considering obstacles, can actually reduce motivation and performance. The mind, having experienced the satisfaction of imagined success, feels less urgency to pursue real success. But there is a technique called mental contrasting that works differently and produces better results. It involves vividly imagining success and then deliberately considering the obstacles that stand in the way. This combination, fantasy paired with realistic assessment of challenges, increases goal commitment. Brain imaging shows increased dopamine release, that neurochemical of motivation and reward. The mind engages more fully with the goal because it has mapped both the destination and the path, including the difficulties along the way. The obstacles are not denied or ignored but incorporated into the plan, making success feel more achievable rather than less. Even the way we talk to ourselves, the pronouns we use in inner dialogue, can change our emotional and physiological responses. Most people naturally think in first person, using I and me when reflecting on their experiences. But research on self-distancing shows that a simple shift in perspective can reduce emotional reactivity. When people refer to themselves in second person, using you, or in third person, using their own name, during stressful experiences, something shifts. The stress feels less personal, less overwhelming. It is as if creating linguistic distance creates psychological distance, allowing the rational mind to engage more fully and the emotional mind to calm down. In laboratory studies, participants instructed to use this self-distancing technique show reduced cortisol spikes during stressful tasks. The stressor is the same, but the way they relate to it, even just through the pronouns they use internally, changes the body's stress response. A small linguistic shift produces a measurable hormonal change. All of these techniques and insights point to a larger truth. The thoughts and interpretations we rehearse repeatedly become automatic. They turn into what we might call mental operating systems, background programs that run without conscious attention, quietly shaping mood, decisions, and long-term health outcomes. If we repeatedly interpret challenges as threats, that interpretation becomes a reflex, activating automatically every time difficulty appears. The body learns to respond with defensive stress, tightening, withdrawing, preparing for harm. Over years and decades, this automatic pattern wears us down, contributing to cardiovascular disease, weakened immunity, chronic pain. But if we rehearse different interpretations, if we practice reframing challenges as opportunities, stress as readiness, setbacks as learning, then these healthier patterns become automatic instead. The body learns a different reflex, one of engagement rather than defense, of approach rather than avoidance. And over time, this different operating system supports better health, greater resilience, more satisfying achievements. We are not born with our interpretations. We learn them from experience, from culture, from the people around us. And what has been learned can be relearned. The mind is not fixed in its habits. It is plastic, capable of change at any age, ready to adopt new ways of understanding and relating to experience. This is the great gift of consciousness, that we can observe our own thoughts, question our own interpretations, and deliberately choose different ones. We can notice when we are catastrophizing and gently redirect toward more balanced thinking. We can catch ourselves adopting a fixed mindset and consciously shift toward growth. We can feel our bodies activating with stress and reframe that activation as preparation rather than panic. In the vast quiet of space, where photons travel for millions of years across emptiness to finally arrive at an eye or a telescope, we recognize that change takes time. New mental habits do not form overnight. The automatic programs of interpretation have been running for years, carved into neural pathways through repetition. But each time we choose a different interpretation, each time we reframe a sensation or reappraise a challenge, we strengthen new pathways and weaken old ones. Slowly, gradually, the new way of thinking becomes easier, more natural, until one day it runs automatically, supporting us without effort, carrying us toward health and resilience and the fullest expression of our potential. The power of mind over matter is not something we have or don't have. It is something we practice, something we develop through attention and intention. It is available in every moment, in every interpretation, in every choice about what our experience means. The racing heart can mean panic or readiness. The difficulty can mean inadequacy or growth. The setback can mean failure or learning. We choose, again and again, in thousands of small moments that add up to the shape of a life. And in that choosing, we discover that we are not passive victims of our biology but active participants in it, minds and bodies working together, each shaping the other in an endless dance of becoming. This is not about achieving perfect control or eliminating all stress and suffering. It is about recognizing our participation, our influence, our capacity to nudge ourselves toward health and wholeness through the stories we tell and the meanings we make. In that recognition lies freedom, lies power, lies the deep truth of what it means to be human, consciousness embedded in flesh, thought shaping matter, mind, and body as one. We turn now to the architecture itself, to the living tissue where mind emerges from matter, where thought arises from the firing of neurons and the flow of chemicals across synapses. The brain is not a computer, fixed and unchanging, running predetermined programs. It is more like a garden, constantly growing, pruning, reshaping itself in response to how we use it, what we pay attention to, and how we choose to train our minds. Every experience leaves traces, every practice carves pathways, and the boundary between psychology and biology dissolves completely when we look closely at how mental activity reshapes the very organ that produces it. Consider a crowded room filled with voices, dozens of conversations happening simultaneously, words overlapping and blending into a wash of sound. And yet, somehow, you can focus on just one conversation, following one thread of meaning through all the noise. This is called the cocktail party effect, and it reveals something profound about attention. The brain does not process all incoming information equally. It filters constantly, selecting what matters and suppressing what doesn't. In real time, neural networks amplify the voice you have chosen to listen to while damping down all the others. The physical sound waves hitting your ears contain all the conversations mixed together, but your conscious experience contains only one, pulled from the chaos through the power of selective attention. The mind, through the simple act of choosing what to focus on, changes which neural signals get processed and which get ignored. What you attend to literally shapes what enters your awareness, which parts of reality you experience and which remain in the background, present but unnoticed. Some things capture attention more easily than others, breaking through our focus without conscious effort. If someone across that crowded room speaks your name, you hear it instantly, even if you were not listening to their conversation. Your brain has filters running constantly in the background, monitoring for self-relevant information. Your own name, words, and concepts related to your identity and concerns, these activate attention networks more strongly than neutral stimuli. The brain prioritizes information that relates to the self, giving it preferential processing, making it harder to ignore. This is not vanity or selfishness. It is a survival mechanism, an efficient way to notice what might affect us while filtering out the vast ocean of information that doesn't matter to our immediate concerns. But it also means that our thoughts shape what we notice. If we are constantly thinking about threats, we become vigilant for danger, spotting potential problems everywhere. If we focus on possibilities, we notice opportunities. The self-related thoughts we rehearse bias what the mind prioritizes, creating a feedback loop where attention strengthens certain patterns of thinking, which further guides attention toward confirming information. Attention is not just a passive filter. It is a skill that can be trained, a capacity that grows stronger with practice. When children engage in structured tasks designed to improve attention, tasks that require them to focus despite distractions or switch between different rules and demands, their executive control improves. They become better at regulating their behavior, at staying focused on goals, at resisting impulses. And these changes are not just behavioral. Brain imaging reveals measurable changes in the neural networks that support attention. The regions involved in focusing, in filtering distractions, in maintaining goals in working memory, these areas show altered patterns of activity and connectivity after training. The practice changes the brain, making the networks more efficient, more coordinated, better able to do what attention requires. One region in particular, the anterior cingulate cortex, sits deep in the brain as a kind of conflict monitor, detecting when we face competing demands or need to exert self-control. When we resist temptation, when we stay focused despite distraction, when we choose the harder right over the easier wrong, this region activates. And remarkably, focused mental training increases not just the activity of this region but its physical structure. After meditation practice or attention training, brain scans show increased gray matter density in the anterior cingulate cortex. The tissue itself has changed, grown, become more substantial. A mental practice, something that exists only as intention and effort, has produced physical changes in the organ that enables that practice. Mind shapes matter at the most intimate level, altering the very substrate from which consciousness emerges. The relationship flows both ways. Just as mental training can grow brain regions, chronic stress can shrink them. The hippocampus, that seahorse-shaped structure crucial for learning and memory, for forming new memories and retrieving old ones, is particularly vulnerable to prolonged psychological stress. When cortisol and other stress hormones remain elevated for weeks and months, they damage hippocampal neurons, causing dendrites to retract and new cell growth to slow. Brain imaging studies show that people who have experienced chronic stress often have smaller hippocampi compared to those with less stressful lives. And this physical shrinkage has functional consequences. Memory becomes less reliable. Learning new information becomes harder. The stress that began as a psychological state, as worry or fear or helplessness, has remodeled the brain in ways that impair cognitive function. The mind's suffering becomes the brain's injury. But again, plasticity works in both directions. If stress can damage, practice can heal and strengthen. Mindfulness meditation and certain other contemplative practices produce measurable increases in gray matter density within just a few weeks. Brain regions linked to attention, to emotional regulation, to self-awareness, these areas show structural changes after relatively brief periods of regular practice. Even the white matter, the neural fibers that connect different brain regions, shows altered organization and connectivity. The networks that allow different parts of the brain to communicate become more integrated, more efficient. What begins as sitting quietly, paying attention to breath or body sensations, becomes a physical remodeling of neural architecture. The practice is mental, but the effects are thoroughly material. The changes go deeper still, down to the fundamental rhythms of brain activity. Neurons fire in patterns, sometimes synchronizing into waves that sweep across the brain at different frequencies. These oscillations, measured as brain waves, correlate with different mental states. Theta rhythms, occurring around 4 to 8 cycles per second, are particularly linked to attention and self-regulation. Some forms of meditation training alter these theta rhythms, changing their strength and coordination across brain regions. The deliberate mental practice reshapes the underlying neural oscillations, the basic electrical rhythms that organize brain function. Consciousness, through the simple act of focused attention, reaches down into the machinery that produces it and adjusts the settings. These neural changes have chemical consequences that ripple through the entire body. Long-term meditators often show lower baseline levels of cortisol, that primary stress hormone that affects everything from immune function to blood sugar to blood pressure. Even when not actively meditating, their resting physiology is different, calmer, less reactive. Years of mental training have recalibrated their stress response system, turning down the volume on physiological arousal. The mind's practice has become the body's new normal. Different types of mental training produce different effects. Compassion meditation, which involves cultivating feelings of loving kindness toward oneself and others, particularly increases activity in brain regions linked to empathy and caregiving. When people trained in compassion meditation view images of others suffering, their brains show heightened activation in areas associated with understanding others' feelings and with the motivation to help. But interestingly, they also show reduced physiological stress markers. Where most people respond to others' suffering with distress that activates their own stress systems, experienced compassion meditators show engagement without overwhelm, empathy without burnout. The mental training has changed how the brain processes social and emotional information, allowing for connection without absorption of others' pain. All of this research points toward a deeper understanding of what mind and body really are. Contemporary cognitive science has moved far beyond the old notion of the brain as an isolated information processor, separate from the body it controls. Instead, scientists now recognize that mental activity is deeply embodied. The brain does not sit apart from the body, issuing commands from on high. It is embedded in the body, constantly receiving signals from every organ and tissue. The heart sends signals upward about its rhythm and the state of the cardiovascular system. The gut transmits information about digestion, inflammation, and the microbiome. Hormones circulate, carrying messages about energy status, stress levels, reproductive state. All of this information flows into the brain continuously, shaping thoughts, feelings, and decisions in ways we rarely notice consciously. When your heart rate increases, your brain detects this and interprets it. Sometimes it means you are exercising. Sometimes it means you are anxious. Sometimes it means you are excited. The brain integrates the cardiac signal with context, with memory, with current goals, and generates an emotional experience that fits the overall pattern. The feeling does not arise from the heart or the brain alone, but from their conversation, from the constant exchange of information between organ and mind. The same is true for the gut. Its signals affect mood and decision-making. An uncomfortable gut can bias us toward negative interpretations and risk avoidance. A calm gut supports clearer thinking and more open exploration. We are not brains driving body machines. We are integrated systems where every part influences every other part, where physical states shape mental states and mental states reshape physical structures in an endless reciprocal dance. This embodied understanding of mind changes how we think about mental training and psychological health. We cannot improve the mind by focusing on the brain alone, any more than we can improve the brain by focusing only on thoughts. Body practices, things that calm the nervous system and support healthy organ function, these affect mental clarity and emotional stability. And mental practices, meditation and attention training and cognitive reappraisal, these reshape brain structure and body chemistry. The most effective approaches work on multiple levels simultaneously, recognizing that mind and body are not two things requiring separate interventions, but one thing that can be influenced from many angles. In the silent depths of space, where matter curves under its own gravity and time bends near massive objects, we see that nothing exists in isolation. Everything is relationship, interaction, mutual influence. And so it is with us. The mind that emerges from brain tissue is shaped by that tissue, but also shapes it in return. The attention we cultivate carves neural pathways. The stress we endure shrinks brain regions, and the peace we practice grows them back. The interpretations we rehearse become automatic, wiring themselves into the patterns of connection between neurons. We are not fixed beings but processes, constantly making and remaking ourselves through how we live, what we practice, where we place our attention. The power we have is not unlimited, but it is real and it is profound. By choosing our mental practices carefully, by training attention, by cultivating beneficial mind states, by working with rather than against the embodied nature of consciousness, we can reshape our own brains. We can grow the regions that support self-control and shrink the pathways of reactivity. We can calm our baseline stress response and strengthen our capacity for compassion. These are not metaphors or inspirational ideas. They are physical facts, demonstrable in brain scans and hormone levels and the measured structure of neural tissue. Mind over matter is not magic. It is neuroplasticity, the brain's lifelong capacity to change itself in response to experience. And we are not passive observers of that change but active participants, shaping our own neural architecture through every choice we make about what to practice, what to attend to, and how to interpret the endless stream of signals flowing between body and mind. In that participation lies both responsibility and tremendous hope. We are not stuck with the brain we have. We are, in partnership with time and practice and persistence, growing the brain we will become. We arrive now at perhaps the most astonishing territory of all, where the boundary between imagination and action blurs to the point of vanishing, where merely thinking about movement can produce many of the same effects as moving itself. Here, in this strange landscape where mind reaches directly into matter, we discover that the brain does not always distinguish clearly between what we do and what we vividly imagine doing. And in that confusion, that beautiful overlap, lies a power we are only beginning to understand and harness. Close your eyes for a moment and imagine reaching out your hand to pick up a cup of water. See it clearly in your mind. Feel your fingers wrapping around the smooth surface. Sense the weight as you lift it. Notice the small adjustments your arm makes to keep the water from spilling. Even though you have not moved at all, even though your hand remains perfectly still, something is happening inside your brain. The motor cortex, the region that controls movement, begins to activate. The promoter areas, which plan and prepare for action, light up with neural activity. The pattern is not identical to actually performing the movement, but it is remarkably similar. Many of the same neurons fire, the same networks engage. The brain rehearses the action internally, running through the sequence of commands it would send to muscles if the movement were real. And remarkably, this mental rehearsal, repeated over time, can measurably improve physical performance when you finally do make that movement for real. Athletes have known this intuitively for decades, long before neuroscience could explain why it works. They visualize their performances before competitions, seeing themselves execute perfect techniques, feeling the movements in their imagination. Sprinters run their races mentally, experiencing each stride, each breath. Gymnasts see themselves rotating through the air, landing perfectly balanced. Basketball players imagine the arc of the ball, the swish of the net. And research confirms that this mental practice produces real benefits. When visualization is combined with physical training, strength gains are greater than with physical training alone. The imagined effort somehow adds to the actual effort, as if the brain counts both as practice, as repetition that strengthens the neural pathways controlling movement. Even more remarkably, mental imagery alone, without any physical movement at all, can increase muscle strength. In carefully controlled studies, people have been asked to imagine exercising a specific muscle group repeatedly, tensing and releasing it in their minds while keeping perfectly still. After weeks of this mental practice, measurements show genuine increases in that muscle's strength. The gains are smaller than with actual exercise, but they are real and measurable. Somehow, the imagination of effort produces some of the benefits of actual effort. Perhaps the brain's motor commands, even when not sent to the muscles, trigger subtle changes in neural connections that make future commands more efficient. Perhaps the vivid imagination activates the muscles minutely, below the threshold of visible movement but enough to stimulate adaptation. The mechanisms are still being explored, but the result is clear. Thinking about movement changes our capacity for movement. The effects extend to complex skilled movements, not just simple strength. Studies of pianists show that long-term visualization of playing specific pieces activates motor cortex changes that are identical to those produced by physical practice. People who spend hours mentally playing the piano, hearing the music in their minds and feeling their fingers moving across imagined keys, show improvements in actual playing skill when they finally sit at a real instrument. The brain has learned the sequences, the timing, the coordination, all through imagination. The physical practice still matters, still provides feedback that imagination cannot fully replicate, but the mental practice creates a foundation that accelerates learning and performance. Opera singers have discovered similar phenomena. Through mental phonation, imagining the production of sound without actually making noise, they can strengthen vocal muscles and refine technique. The imagination of singing, when done with sufficient vividness and detail, activates the subtle muscles of the larynx and the coordination of breath and resonance. Some trained singers can produce what they describe as full operatic tones entirely in their imagination, feeling the vibration and power as if actually singing, and this mental practice measurably improves their vocal capacity. The body responds to the imagined demand as if it were real, adapting to support the performance even though no sound has been produced. The brain's plasticity extends to radical reorganizations when circumstances demand it. People who lose their vision do not simply lose visual processing. The visual cortex, that large region at the back of the brain normally devoted to processing sight, gets recruited for other purposes. Blind individuals often develop remarkable spatial abilities, navigating complex environments with ease through mental mapping. They create detailed cognitive maps of spaces they have never seen, integrating information from sound, touch, and movement into coherent representations of where things are. And EEG studies show that during this spatial processing, their visual cortex activates. The brain region is the same, but its function has been repurposed. What once processed light now processes space. The hardware remains, but the software has been completely rewritten by experience and necessity. Sometimes the brain can be tricked into experiences that feel utterly real despite being generated entirely by false input. Mirror box therapy, used to treat phantom limb pain in people who have lost arms or legs, demonstrates this beautifully. The patient places their remaining limb into a box with mirrors arranged so that when they look down, they see two limbs, one real and one reflected. When they move the real limb, the reflection makes it appear that both limbs are moving. And often, remarkably, the phantom limb pain vanishes. The brain, receiving visual feedback that the missing limb is moving normally and pain-free, adjusts its internal model. The pain, which existed as a mismatch between the brain's map of the body and the actual state of the body, resolves when the visual input provides the expected feedback. No medicine, no surgery, just the manipulation of perception, and suffering that was very real simply disappears. The rubber hand illusion reveals how flexible our sense of body ownership really is. In this experiment, a person's real hand is hidden from view while a rubber hand is placed in front of them. A researcher then strokes both the real hand and the rubber hand simultaneously with a brush. After a few minutes of this synchronized stimulation, something extraordinary happens. Most people begin to feel as if the rubber hand is their own hand. They feel the touch on the rubber hand. Their sense of body boundaries shifts to incorporate this fake limb. And if the researcher suddenly strikes the rubber hand with a hammer, the person flinches and may even feel pain, even though their real hand is perfectly safe. The brain has updated its body model based purely on the correlation between what it sees and what it feels, accepting the rubber hand as part of the self. Perception alone, when consistent and synchronized, can alter our most basic sense of where our body begins and ends. In people who have had their corpus callosum severed, the thick bundle of fibers that normally allows the brain's two hemispheres to communicate, even stranger phenomena emerge. Each hemisphere can learn things independently, without the other knowing. One hemisphere can acquire a motor skill while the other remains ignorant of how to perform it. Each side has its own knowledge, its own capabilities, its own local control over the body parts it commands. This proves that mental control over physical action is not unified and centralized but distributed, with different brain regions capable of learning and executing movements independently. The mind is not one thing but many processes running in parallel, coordinated most of the time by communication between regions, but capable of independence when those connections are cut. The most dramatic demonstration of mind directly controlling matter may be brain-computer interfaces, devices that read neural signals and translate them into commands for external devices. Paralyzed patients, people who have lost the ability to move their bodies due to spinal cord injuries or neurodegenerative diseases, can learn to control robotic arms through thought alone. They imagine moving their own arm, and the thought, the intention, the neural pattern of that imagined movement is detected by electrodes and converted into signals that move the machine. The mind reaches out directly, bypassing the broken connection to the body, and accomplishes in the external world what it can no longer accomplish in flesh. The thought becomes action without the usual intermediary of muscle and nerve. This is not science fiction. It is current medical technology, still crude but improving rapidly, offering hope that paralysis may eventually become a condition of the body but not a prison for the will. All of these phenomena point to a profound truth about the relationship between mental and physical. The brain does not simply control the body in a one-way chain of command. It creates models of the body, predictions about what should happen when we move or what we should feel based on sensory input. And these models, these predictions, can be manipulated. When imagination is vivid enough, the brain processes it similarly to reality. When sensory input is crafted carefully, the brain accepts false information as true. When neural signals are intercepted and redirected, the mind can control devices as if they were limbs. The boundary between self and world, between mind and matter, is not fixed by physics but constructed by the brain. And that construction is flexible, hackable, capable of remarkable reorganizations when circumstances demand or when we deliberately practice. The practical implications are enormous. If mental practice can improve physical performance, then athletes, musicians, surgeons, anyone who needs to perform complex motor skills, can supplement their training with visualization and mental rehearsal. If the brain's body map can be updated through clever manipulation of sensory feedback, then chronic pain conditions that arise from distorted body representations might be treatable through perceptual interventions. If neural signals can control external devices, then the capabilities of the human mind need not be limited by the capabilities of the human body. We can extend ourselves into machines, into artificial limbs and exoskeletons and tools that respond to intention as naturally as our own flesh. But perhaps the deepest implication is philosophical. These findings challenge any simple materialism that sees mind as merely an emergent property of brain activity, passive and powerless. They also challenge any dualism that sees mind and matter as separate substances. What we observe instead is a continuous loop of causation where neural activity produces conscious experience, and conscious experience, through attention and practice and imagination, reshapes neural activity and physical capability. Mind and matter are not two things but two aspects of one thing, each constantly creating the other. The imagination that activates motor cortex is both mental and physical. The pain that vanishes when the brain is tricked is both real and illusory. The robotic arm that moves in response to thought is controlled by matter through matter in a loop that has no clear beginning. In the endless expanse of space, where distinctions blur and categories fail, we rest in this mystery. We are beings who can change ourselves by imagining change, who can learn by thinking about learning, who can reach out with mind alone and move things in the world. This is not supernatural. It is the natural consequence of what we are, embodied minds, neural flesh capable of representation and imagination, and the recursive loop of consciousness observing and modifying itself. The power is not limitless, but within the constraints of biology it is remarkable, offering possibilities that previous generations could barely imagine. We practice with our minds and our bodies improve. We imagine movement and our brains prepare for it. We create coherent perceptions and our sense of self shifts to match them. We intend action and our thoughts, read by machines, become action in the physical world. Mind over matter is not one kind of phenomenon but many, all pointing to the same conclusion, that the relationship between consciousness and physical reality is more intimate, more reciprocal, more strange and wonderful than any simple theory can capture. And in that strangeness, that intimate reciprocity, we find not just understanding but possibility, the potential to grow and heal and extend ourselves in ways that honor both the mental and physical aspects of what we are, neither denying the material constraints of biology nor ignoring the genuine causal power of thought and intention and practice. We arrive now at the outer edges of what seems possible, where individuals push beyond what we thought were the fixed limits of human biology, demonstrating voluntary control over processes that science long insisted were completely automatic and beyond conscious reach. Here, at this frontier, the distinction between voluntary and involuntary dissolves, revealing that with training and intention and remarkable focus, the mind can reach into the body's deepest autonomic systems and adjust them like turning dials, controlling what was thought to be uncontrollable. Imagine being trapped completely inside your own body, fully conscious and aware but unable to move any muscle except perhaps your eyes. This is locked-in syndrome, one of the most isolating conditions imaginable. The mind remains intact, thoughts and feelings flowing normally, but the pathways from brain to body are severed by stroke or disease. And yet, even here, at what seems like the absolute limit of physical constraint, the mind finds ways to reach out. People living with locked-in syndrome have learned to communicate full sentences by imagining the act of typing. They think of pressing specific keys on a keyboard they cannot touch, and EEG systems, reading the electrical patterns on their scalp, translate these imagined movements into letters and words appearing on a screen. The accuracy exceeds 90% in some systems. The person is not moving at all, but the intention to move, the mental rehearsal of typing, produces distinct enough neural signatures that machines can decode them. The mind, even when completely disconnected from the body's motors, still generates the patterns of intention, and technology has learned to listen to those patterns and give them voice in the world. For some locked-in patients, eye movement becomes the last remaining voluntary control. But it is enough. Eye-gaze communication systems track where the person looks, and by directing their gaze to letters or symbols on a screen, they can spell out messages, control computers, maintain connection with the world. The technology is external, but the control is purely mental, purely intentional. The preserved consciousness drives the system through nothing but focused attention and the will to communicate. What seems like a prison becomes a narrow channel through which the mind can still reach out and touch others, express itself, participate in life despite the body's profound limitations. The discoveries go beyond those with extreme conditions. Even people with fully functioning bodies can learn voluntary control over systems that textbooks describe as automatic. Heart rate, for instance, is primarily regulated by the autonomic nervous system, speeding up and slowing down without conscious thought in response to activity, stress, and metabolic needs. But through biofeedback training, where people receive real-time information about their heart rate displayed on a screen, many can learn to influence it voluntarily. They watch the numbers change and experiment with different mental strategies, different breathing patterns, different ways of directing attention, until they discover approaches that work. With practice, they can speed their heart or slow it, can increase or decrease the variability in the spacing between beats. And this voluntary control has genuine health benefits. People who learn to modify their heart rate variability patterns show improvements in blood pressure and stress resilience. They have gained access to a control panel that most of us never know exists, adjusting their cardiovascular system's responsiveness through nothing but focused awareness and practice. Blood flow itself can be consciously influenced. Through autogenic training, a systematic mental technique involving specific phrases and visualizations, people can learn to direct blood flow to their hands and feet, warming cold extremities through intention alone. This is not just subjective sensation. Skin temperature measurements confirm actual increases in blood flow to the targeted areas. This capacity has been used medically to treat conditions like Raynaud's syndrome, where blood vessels constrict excessively in response to cold, causing painful loss of circulation to fingers and toes. By learning to consciously dilate those vessels, to send blood where it is needed through mental direction, patients gain relief without medication. The same techniques have been applied to migraines, with some patients learning to redirect blood flow away from the head during the early stages of an attack, reducing the severity of symptoms through voluntary control of vascular tone. Even reflexes, those responses that seem to bypass conscious control entirely, can be brought under voluntary influence with sufficient training. The gag reflex, for instance, protects the airway from foreign objects by triggering an automatic contraction when the back of the throat is touched. But trained individuals, particularly those who regularly undergo medical procedures like endoscopy, can learn to suppress this reflex through focused awareness and breathing techniques. They can time their swallows precisely, maintain relaxation in throat muscles that normally would contract involuntarily, allowing tubes and instruments to pass without triggering the protective response and without needing sedation. The reflex pathway still exists, but conscious control has been extended into territory normally governed by automatic processes. Some practitioners push this voluntary control to extremes that challenge everything we think we know about human limits. Yogis trained in advanced breath control techniques can slow their metabolism so dramatically that they survive in conditions of extreme oxygen deprivation that would kill most people. Their heart rates have been measured dropping to just a few beats per minute during deep meditative states, 3 or 4 beats where a normal resting rate would be 60 or 70. The metabolic demand drops so low that the tiny trickle of oxygen is sufficient. They enter a state resembling hibernation in some mammals, a profound slowing of all biological processes achieved not through drugs or extreme cold but through mental techniques and breath control practiced over decades. Tibetan monks practicing a form of meditation called tummo demonstrate a different kind of voluntary control, the ability to raise core body temperature through mental focus and specific breathing patterns. In controlled studies conducted in freezing conditions, researchers have watched monks sit nearly naked in environments near 0 degrees, wrapped in wet sheets that would normally cause dangerous hypothermia. And through their practice, the monks generate enough internal heat to dry those wet sheets within hours, steam rising from their bodies in the frigid air. Their core temperature increases by several degrees above normal. This is not just improved tolerance of cold. It is active heat generation controlled by mental techniques, the intentional modulation of metabolic rate and blood flow to produce warmth where normally there would be only dangerous cooling. More recently, individuals like Wim Hof have demonstrated similar capacities and, crucially, have shown that these abilities can be taught relatively quickly to others. Hof has used specific breathing techniques combined with mindset training and cold exposure to voluntarily influence his autonomic nervous system in ways that medical science long insisted were impossible. He can maintain normal core temperature while immersed in ice water for extended periods. He can suppress fever responses after being injected with bacterial endotoxin, a substance that normally causes reliable inflammatory reactions. His immune system responds differently because he has learned to consciously influence the stress response and inflammatory pathways that regulate immunity. And when he teaches his techniques to volunteers with no prior training, they too show these abilities within days or weeks. The capacity is not unique to rare individuals. It appears to be latent in many people, waiting to be activated by the right training. Research on cold exposure combined with specific breathing and mindset techniques reveals changes at the deepest level of biology. Gene expression patterns shift. Genes related to immune function and inflammation show altered activity after prolonged practice. The mind's influence reaches all the way down to which genes are turned on and off in our cells, which proteins are produced, which pathways are activated or suppressed. What begins as a mental practice, as breathing patterns and focused intention, cascades through every level of organization from nervous system to endocrine system to cellular function to genetic transcription. The boundary between mind and matter, between voluntary and involuntary, between psychology and molecular biology, these distinctions that seem so clear and obvious turn out to be permeable, provisional, more about our categories than about nature itself. The implications ripple outward in multiple directions. Medically, if people can learn voluntary control over inflammation and immune responses, over vascular tone and metabolic rate, then many conditions currently treated with drugs might be addressed through training instead. The interventions would be behavioral and mental rather than pharmacological, working with the body's own regulatory systems rather than overriding them with external chemicals. This does not mean abandoning medicine, but it suggests medicine might be supplemented or in some cases replaced by trained self-regulation. Philosophically, these findings continue to erode any clean separation between mind and body, between will and mechanism. We cannot say that heart rate is automatic if people can learn to control it voluntarily. We cannot say that immune responses are purely physiological if mental techniques can modulate them. We cannot say that core temperature regulation is beyond conscious reach if monks can raise it through meditation. The categories of voluntary and involuntary turn out to describe not fixed properties of different systems, but rather the current state of our training and awareness. What is involuntary today might be voluntary tomorrow with the right practice. What seems automatic might be accessible to intention with the right techniques. The human body contains layers of regulation, some conscious and some unconscious, some requiring deliberate attention and some operating in the background. But the boundaries between these layers are not walls. They are more like membranes, and under the right conditions, conscious awareness can extend through them, reaching down into processes that normally run without supervision. This does not make everything controllable. There are real limits. We cannot think ourselves taller or younger. We cannot consciously direct individual neurons to fire. But within the vast middle ground between obviously voluntary actions like raising an arm and completely involuntary processes like cellular respiration, there is enormous territory where intention can learn to operate, where the mind can extend its reach through practice and biofeedback and patient attention to subtle internal sensations. The yogis and monks who demonstrate these capacities have typically spent decades in training, dedicating their lives to the development of these skills. But Wim Hof and others have shown that significant gains can be achieved in much shorter timeframes when the training is systematic and focused. This suggests that human potential in this direction has been vastly underestimated, not because the capacities are common, but because the training methods have been rare and closely held within specific traditions. As these methods become more widely known and studied, as science learns to measure and understand the mechanisms involved, the abilities that once seemed nearly magical may become accessible to many more people. In the infinite darkness between stars, where matter is sparse and cold, we can appreciate the remarkable warmth and complexity of living systems, the intricate feedback loops and regulatory mechanisms that keep us alive. And now we can appreciate that these mechanisms, far from being fixed programs running beyond our reach, are to some degree accessible, modifiable, trainable. The heart that beats automatically can also be consciously influenced. The blood vessels that constrict and dilate in automatic response to cold can be told to stay open through mental intention. The metabolism that normally adjusts itself can be drastically slowed through breath and meditation. The immune system that normally responds automatically to threats can be modulated through specific mental and physical practices. We are not passive passengers in our bodies but potential collaborators with our own biology. The autonomic nervous system, named for its autonomy from conscious control, turns out to be not entirely autonomous after all. It listens, in ways we are still learning to understand, to the signals sent by conscious intention and focused practice. And in that listening, in that responsiveness, lies a frontier of human capability that we have barely begun to explore. The mind's reach into matter extends further than we imagined, not as magic but as biology, not as supernatural power but as natural capacity waiting to be developed, trained, refined through patience and practice and the willingness to explore the inner landscape where thought and physiology meet and dance together in the ancient rhythm of life itself. We turn now toward the places where individual minds merge into collective experience, where personal consciousness expands or contracts under social and spiritual influences, and where the power of belief and practice reaches into territories that make even scientists pause and reconsider what they thought they understood about the relationship between mind and body. Here, at the edges of the explicable, we find phenomena that challenge our categories while still leaving traces that can be measured, studied, and to some degree understood. When people gather in groups for shared purpose, particularly when they move or vocalize together, something remarkable happens to their individual physiologies. Studies of crowd psychology reveal that synchronized chanting or rhythmic movement can entrain heart rates and brain waves across the group. The hearts begin to beat in similar patterns, not exactly synchronized but coordinating, coming into resonance. Brain activity measured by EEG shows similar frequencies dominating across multiple individuals. The boundaries between separate nervous systems seem to soften as collective rhythms emerge. This is not mystical merging. It is biological coordination, the same processes that allow musicians to play together or dancers to move as one, but extended to involuntary systems. The shared experience, the common rhythm, creates a kind of physiological harmony where individual bodies tune to each other like instruments in an orchestra, each maintaining its own identity but contributing to a collective pattern that none produces alone. In some cultural traditions, this collective experience combines with altered states of consciousness to enable feats that seem impossible. Firewalking, the practice of walking barefoot across beds of burning coals that reach temperatures exceeding 1000 degrees Fahrenheit, has been documented across many cultures and studied by researchers seeking to understand how skin survives such exposure. Part of the answer is physical. Rapid steps minimize contact time, and the coals themselves, despite their high temperature, have low thermal conductivity compared to metal. But studies also document that firewalkers often enter trance states during the ritual, states of focused consciousness that seem to suppress both pain perception and the body's inflammatory response to heat injury. Not all who walk emerge unharmed, but many do, and those who practice the associated mental disciplines show lower rates of blistering despite temperatures that would normally cause immediate tissue damage. The expectation of safety, the ritual preparation, the altered state of consciousness, all appear to modulate how the body responds to the extreme heat. Religious ecstasy produces its own remarkable phenomena. Glossolalia, speaking in tongues, occurs when practitioners enter states of spiritual fervor and begin producing fluent streams of vocalization that sound like language but follow no known linguistic structure. Brain imaging during glossolalia shows decreased activity in regions normally associated with executive control and language production. It is as if the conscious, organizing parts of the mind step aside, allowing more automatic speech processes to run unchecked, producing patterns that have the rhythm and flow of language without its semantic content. The speakers experience it as spontaneous, as speech coming through them rather than from them. And in a sense, this is neurologically accurate. The normal pathways of conscious verbal control are suppressed, and the output arises from deeper, more automatic levels of brain function. Even more mysterious are the stigmata, wounds that appear on the bodies of some deeply devout individuals during states of intense religious ecstasy, wounds that correspond to the crucifixion injuries of Christ, marks on hands and feet, sometimes on the forehead or side. Medical examination of stigmata cases finds actual tissue damage, bleeding, lesions that penetrate the skin, but no physical cause can be identified. No injury occurred from outside. The wounds seem to arise from within, as if the intense focus on the suffering of Christ somehow manifests that suffering in the believer's own flesh. Whether this represents an extreme form of psychosomatic response unconscious self-injury, or something we do not yet understand, the phenomenon demonstrates that deeply held belief combined with altered states can produce physical changes in tissue that are visible and measurable, even if the mechanism remains obscure. Outside religious contexts, some individuals have developed remarkable voluntary control over physiological processes through training and focus. Professional mentalists, performers who create seemingly impossible demonstrations of mental ability, sometimes show genuine physiological control that science can measure. Some can create temperature differentials across their body, making one hand measurably warmer while cooling the other through focused attention alone. The mechanisms likely involve conscious control of blood flow, directing vessels to dilate in one location while constricting in another, but the level of control achieved through mental focus alone is striking. What most people cannot perceive, much less influence, these trained individuals can direct with intention. In Tibet, the tradition of Lungompa describes runners who cover extraordinary distances, reportedly 300 miles in 24 hours, by entering trance states that fundamentally alter their relationship to fatigue and metabolic need. While such extreme claims are difficult to verify with scientific rigor, studies of meditation and trance states confirm that these practices can significantly alter metabolic rate, pain perception, and the subjective experience of exertion. If the metabolic demands drop, if pain signals are suppressed, if the psychological experience of fatigue is reduced through altered consciousness, then feats of endurance that would normally be impossible become conceivable. The body's limits are partly set by physiology and partly by the brain's protective mechanisms that force us to stop before we damage ourselves. Alter those protective mechanisms through trance, and the boundaries shift. Trying to make sense of all these phenomena, some researchers have proposed thinking about mind not as a thing but as a process, an energetic pattern operating through the brain's physical machinery. Thoughts, in this view, are not material objects, not substances that weigh something or occupy space, but patterns of organization, ways that neural activity arranges itself. And yet these patterns have causal power. They can organize and direct neural activity, shaping which neurons fire and in what sequences. This perspective tries to honor both the obvious physical reality of the brain and the equally obvious reality that thoughts feel different from electrochemical signals, that consciousness seems to be something more than or other than mere neural firing, even if it depends entirely on neural firing for its existence. The practical applications of mental processes continue to expand in remarkable directions. Surgical teams that engage in mental rehearsal of procedures, visualizing each step before performing operations, show improved outcomes in randomized trials. Complication rates drop. Patient recovery times improve. The mental rehearsal aligns the team's understanding, catches potential problems before they occur, and primes the motor and decision-making systems of each team member for the actual procedure. What happens in imagination shapes what happens in reality, making the surgery smoother and safer. Even deeply held beliefs that have caused suffering can sometimes be shifted through intensive mental work. Cult deprogrammers report using techniques of intense visualization and cognitive reframing to help people escape from delusional belief systems that had taken over their lives. By creating vivid alternative narratives, by systematically questioning the assumptions underlying the cult's worldview, by reframing experiences in new contexts, these interventions can produce what looks like sudden insight, a collapse of the belief structure that had seemed unshakable. And when these shifts occur, physiological stress markers drop measurably. Heart rate variability improves. Cortisol levels decline. The body registers the release from the psychological prison as profoundly as the mind does. On a gentler note, simple practices like gratitude journaling, where people regularly write about things they appreciate and feel thankful for, produce measurable benefits. Those who maintain gratitude practices report improved sleep quality and fewer physical aches and pains. The mechanism likely involves reductions in stress-related arousal, as the practice of noticing and appreciating good things shifts attention away from threats and problems, giving the nervous system permission to relax. The practice is mental, but the effects ripple through sleep architecture, muscle tension, and the subjective experience of physical comfort. All of these phenomena, from the ecstatic to the mundane, from the collective to the individual, from the mysterious to the well-understood, point toward the same underlying truth. Mind and matter are not separate kingdoms occasionally interacting but intimately woven aspects of a unified system. The mind shapes the body constantly, through every thought and belief and practice. The body shapes the mind constantly, through every sensation and chemical signal and structural constraint. And in the space between, in the interaction, in the endless conversation between neural firing and conscious experience, between belief and biology, between intention and physiology, we find the full range of human potential. Some of these potentials we understand well. We can explain in molecular detail how stress thoughts trigger cortisol release, how relaxation practices calm the autonomic nervous system, how placebo expectations alter pain processing. Other phenomena remain at the edges of our understanding, requiring more research, better theories, new frameworks that can account for effects that seem impossible but keep occurring when studied carefully. The firewalkers who do not burn, the monks who raise their temperature in freezing cold, the stigmata that appear without physical cause, these challenge our current models while still leaving measurable traces that science must eventually explain. What we know for certain is that the territory of mind over matter is larger than we once believed, with further reaches still being explored and mapped. The conscious mind's influence extends into processes we thought were completely automatic. The body's responses can be dramatically altered by belief, expectation, and practice. Groups of people can synchronize their physiologies through shared experience. Intense mental states can produce physical changes that persist after the state has passed. Training can develop capacities that seem impossible to those who have never attempted to develop them. In the darkness between the stars, where photons travel alone for eons before finally encountering matter, we can appreciate the profound interconnection within living systems, where nothing travels alone, where every process connects to every other, where mind and matter are always in conversation, always shaping each other, always creating the next moment together. We are not minds trapped in bodies or bodies giving rise to illusions of mind. We are unified beings where the mental and physical are two ways of describing the same living process, the same dance of organization and flow that makes us conscious, capable, and far more powerful than we usually imagine. The exploration continues, pushing further into possibility with every practice session, every experiment, every individual who discovers that the limits they thought were fixed are actually malleable, responsive, waiting to be tested and expanded through the quiet, persistent power of focused intention and disciplined practice. When people gather in large groups, something invisible begins to connect them. Synchronized chanting, rhythmic movement, the shared focus of hundreds or thousands of minds turned toward the same purpose, these create a kind of resonance. Studies show that in such moments, heart rates begin to align across the crowd. Brain waves entrain, falling into similar patterns, as if the individual nervous systems are listening to one another, finding a common rhythm. This is not mysticism. This is measurable biology. The body responds to social synchrony, to the feeling of being part of something larger. We are not isolated systems. We are porous, responsive to the people around us, and when we move or speak or breathe together, our internal rhythms drift toward harmony. The group becomes, temporarily, a kind of organism, its parts coordinated not by conscious planning but by the deep tendency of living systems to synchronize when brought close together. In certain rituals, in cultures around the world, people walk across beds of glowing coals, embers reaching temperatures near 1000 degrees Fahrenheit. They take rapid steps, yes, and the contact is brief, but this alone should not be enough. Blistering should follow. Pain should stop them. Yet firewalkers emerge unharmed, their feet unmarked. They enter trance states, focused and calm, and in those states, something shifts. Pain perception is suppressed. The body's inflammatory response, which would normally rush to defend against heat, seems muted. The mind, locked into a particular kind of attention, holds the body steady, prevents the panic that would slow the steps, the flinching that would extend contact. Belief plays a role, expectation plays a role, but so does the neurological state achieved through ritual and focus. The mind prepares the body for what should be unbearable, and the body, trusting that preparation, does not react as it otherwise would. Across the silent distances of the universe, no sound travels. And in certain religious experiences, sound emerges that has no clear source in learned language. Glossolalia, speaking in tongues, produces fluent, rhythmic speech that sounds like language but has no translatable meaning. Brain imaging of people in this state shows something unusual. The regions responsible for executive control, for deliberate language production, are suppressed. Activity shifts to other areas, and speech flows without the normal oversight, without conscious construction. It is not random babble. It has prosody, structure, a quality that mimics real language. The mind, released from its usual governance, still produces patterns, still organizes sound, but along different pathways, driven by states of intense emotion and surrender rather than deliberate thought. The brain, flexible and vast, contains many modes of expression, and not all of them follow the rules we use in ordinary conversation. There are documented cases, examined by medical professionals, of devout individuals developing wounds that match the crucifixion injuries described in religious texts. Stigmata, bleeding from the palms, the feet, the side. And yet no physical cause can be found. No trauma, no infection, no mechanism that would explain the appearance of these wounds. They emerge during states of intense religious ecstasy, when the person is deeply immersed in identification with the suffering they contemplate. The mind, holding an image so vividly, with such emotional force, that the body somehow manifests it. The mechanism is unknown. Mainstream medicine has no satisfying explanation. But the wounds are real. They bleed. They hurt. And they suggest that under certain conditions, belief and focus can create physical changes that defy our current understanding of how mind and matter interact. We are left with the mystery, with the humbling recognition that consciousness can do things we have not yet learned to predict or explain. Out in the cold void, temperature is the motion of molecules, simple and mechanical. But in the human body, temperature is regulated, managed, and some individuals, through focus training, can create deliberate differentials. Professional mentalists, demonstrating voluntary control, can raise the temperature of one hand while lowering the temperature of the other, creating a measurable gap of several degrees. They call it psychic heat, though there is nothing supernatural about it. It is the mind directing blood flow, altering metabolic activity in specific regions through intense focus and practice technique. The body's thermostat, usually automatic, yields to conscious instruction. And the result is visible on thermal cameras, undeniable, a map of warmth and coolness painted by attention alone. In the high plateaus of Tibet, there are runners who cover impossible distances. 300 miles in 24 hours, moving across harsh terrain, through thin air, without apparent exhaustion. The Lungompa practitioners enter trance states while running, a kind of moving meditation that alters their physiology. Metabolic needs drop. The perception of fatigue is minimized. They describe a lightness, a feeling of the body moving without effort, as if carried by something other than muscle and will. The trance does not make them superhuman. It makes them efficient, paring away the mental and physical friction that normally limits endurance. The mind quiets, and in that quiet, the body finds a rhythm it can sustain far longer than usual, a pace that would break most people but which, for them, becomes almost effortless. Some researchers speak of the mind not as a thing but as a process, an energetic pattern moving through the brain's physical machinery. Thoughts are not objects you can hold. They are events, flows of information, configurations of neural activity that organize and direct the meat and electricity they arise from. This is a strange loop. The brain generates the mind, and the mind, in turn, shapes the brain. Patterns of thought can strengthen certain pathways, weaken others, alter the structure they depend on. We are not just our neurons. We are what those neurons are doing, the story they are telling, the pattern they are holding. And that pattern has power over its own substrate, sculpting the flesh that makes it possible. Surgeons prepare for operations, rehearsing the procedure in their minds, visualizing each step, each cut, each movement of their hands. And when surgical teams engage in this mental rehearsal together, walking through the operation in shared imagination, outcomes improve. Complication rates drop. Patients recover faster. The mental practice creates coordination, clarity, a smoothness to the actual performance that reduces errors and hesitation. The mind, rehearsing in its theater, prepares the body for precision. And when multiple minds rehearse together, they align, they anticipate one another, they move as a unit when the real moment arrives. Thought, shared and focused, becomes a tool for refining action before action is taken. There are people held captive by beliefs that have consumed their sense of reality. Cult members, living inside worldviews that isolated them from truth, from connection, from their own best interests. And those who work to free them, the deprogrammers, use techniques that might seem simple but are psychologically powerful. Intense visualization, helping the person see alternative narratives, alternative futures. Reframing, shifting the meaning of experiences, loosening the grip of the ideology. And these techniques work. Deeply held delusions begin to crack. And as the beliefs shift, physiological stress markers drop measurably. Heart rate variability improves. Cortisol levels fall. The body, which had been tensed in defense of a false reality, relaxes as truth is allowed back in. The mind's beliefs are not abstract. They are held in the flesh, maintained by tension and vigilance, and when the beliefs change, the body releases what it had been holding. In the quiet practice of writing down what one is grateful for, there is a subtle but real effect. People who keep gratitude journals, who take a few minutes each day to note what they appreciate, what brought them joy or comfort, these people report sleeping better. They report fewer physical aches and pains. The practice does not change external circumstances. It changes attention, shifting focus toward what is working rather than what is broken. And this shift in attention reduces stress-related arousal. The body, not constantly scanning for threats, not rehearsing grievances, settles into a calmer baseline. Muscles unclench. Sleep comes easier. Pain, which is always partly influenced by stress and attention, diminishes slightly. The mind, choosing where to direct its gaze, chooses indirectly how much the body suffers. Gratitude is not a cure, but it is a tool, one more way that the quality of our thoughts ripples down into the quality of our physical experience, shaping rest and comfort from the inside out.